I'm gonna get triggered by this, aren't I?
Federal agents detained and questioned Hassan Piker at O'Hare International Airport in Chicago, and I don't care if you love him, you detest him, you don't know who the hell this big-bodied, small-headed bastard who every picture it looks like he wants to make out with himself is. But the situation and this news, at the very least, it should make you somewhat concerned. Because it's not just this outlier situation that's happening in a bubble. But for some of y'all that don't know, Hassan is one of the biggest political streamers out there. He's got millions of followers across Twitch, YouTube, X, you name it. And to list every controversy or notable thing, that would be its own video, but he is especially known for speaking out on behalf of Palestinians as well as against the actions of the US government. With what just happened, you have him claiming that his detention and interrogation were not random. Hassan going public and saying that he was questioned about his political views, including whether he supports Trump and whether he's connected to Hamas or affiliated groups in the region, and ultimately accusing the administration of trying to silence dissent with intimidation. Right, one of the things that we need to note here, because we're talking about someone trying to enter the country, we've seen a number of instances, is that Hassan was born in New Jersey and he's a US citizen. And he had him saying here that he was coming back into the country on Sunday after traveling to France with his family to celebrate Mother's Day. And with coming back to the country, he had hopes, though not expectations, that everything was going to go smoothly since he was accepted into the government's global entry program, which normally speeds up security checks for pre-approved low-risk travelers returning to the States. But instead, he said what happened was that he was stopped for additional questioning and saying that it wasn't that bad, but that it was a very strange experience overall. With Hassan then later expanding on the experience in detail on his stream.
They knew who I was, and they were ready to receive me, let's just say. And it wasn't a very warm welcome. I get to the global entry line, and they're processing everybody expeditiously. You walk up, boom. You walk up, immediately they take your photo of your face.
Boom.
And you walk in, gets to me. Take a photo, boom, walk in. Instantly. The Customs and Border Patrol agent goes, "Step aside, sir."
And from there, Hassan says that he was taken to a detention area to wait, and saying that the others that he saw there included terrified families and an old lady in a wheelchair, and that none of those that he spoke to were US citizens. And then eventually being called in for questioning. And with that, Hassan then describing the conversation as surprisingly cordial, but also claiming that the feeling was kind of undermined by the fact that the entire process is supposed to be intimidating. But you also had him saying that he wanted to see exactly how far CBP was going to go, and noting that he was in a position of privilege to be able to do so. And so with that, saying rather than pleading the fifth, as maybe would normally be a good idea.
Can I just say how this is the cringiest way to say, yeah, so I was definitely in control of the situation the whole time, and I just want to see how far they would take it. So I was, testing him the whole time. Bro.
He was very candid about some things, including his views on Donald Trump.
There were definitely areas where I was very revealing about my position, knowing full well that they know exactly what they're looking for. I saw no reason.
Also, if you think about it, isn't this entire story kind of defeated by the fact that he said they questioned me on my political views, and I told them that I hated Donald Trump, and and I'm a fan of the Palestinians, blah, blah. It's like, okay, you did all the things, but then nothing happened. So isn't that good then? That they didn't actually. So it's what's the implication here? It sounds like that even though you gave the politically unpopular answers to them, they didn't do anything to you, right?
And to hold back on certain things. So I said, I don't like Trump. I was like, what are you going to do? It's protected by the First Amendment. I don't like Trump.
With Hassan there saying that the interrogators seemed sympathetic, and he also noted that the agent identified himself as Iraqi, which Hassan said might have been part of it, and saying he might have lucked out in that regard. But that said, when he asked why he was being detained, the agent reportedly told Hassan that it was routine. Hassan then claiming that rather than questions about Trump, there were a lot about his views in connection to Israel.
They're asking me about Trump. They're asking me about Hamas and
if they were targeting you, wouldn't they just deny you global entry? Because global entry is literally a heightened screening program that once you pass, you're allowed to get expedited entrance into the United States. Wouldn't they just say, no, you don't get it because you're a political opponent or something? I don't know.
He kept saying stuff like,
whatever, dude.
Do you like Hamas? Do you support Hamas? Do you think Hamas is a resistance group? I kept saying a couple different things. One, in terms of Israel and all the wars, I was like, I'm on the side of civilians. I want the endless bloodshed to end. I am a pacifist. I want wars to end. I just kept repeating that over and over again. Every single time he asked me a question, I just kept repeating that. And every single time he asked me a question, a leading question about Hamas, I kept saying, the United States State Department recognizes Hamas as a terrorist organization. The United States State Department recognizes Hamas as a terrorist organization.
From there, you had Hassan saying the questions went from being about his views to asking if he had any contact or involvement with Hamas as well as the Houthis or Hezbollah.
Straight up. That's literally what this conversation was about. And it's not even a joke. They straight up tried to get something out of me that I think they could use to basically detain me permanently.
But you said that you didn't like Trump, so didn't they succeed? Why didn't they do anything to you?
Which is insane, because there is no direct connection or direct involvement.
But ultimately, with all that, while Hassan speculated they were looking for a reason to hold him, he said, what it was really all about was intimidation.
I think they did it because they know who the I am, and they wanted to put the fear of God into me. Obviously, the reason for why they're doing that is, I think, to try to create an environment of fear, to try to get people like myself, or at least like others that would be in my shoes that don't have that same level of security, to shut the up. Damn. And for me, I'm going to use the privilege that I have in that moment to try and see what they're doing. Okay. Because every single thing that they ask me, trying to get me to say something like, oh, I support Hamas or whatever, is
Like if that was the goal, there's a billion things that they could do to you that they would be fully within their rights to do. That would just be so fucking annoying, right? Like they could call people over for like an enhanced screening, or they could tear apart all your luggage, or they could actually detain you in like an actual interrogation facility and like have you wait for 6 to 10 hours as they get people. Like there's a lot of shit they could do if they were really targeting you, but
literally not allowed. Like they are not. What do you mean? Like why is this denying me entry into the country of my birth? Like this is my birthright. I'm an American citizen. You can't just stop me at the border and be like, what's your opinion on Donald Trump? You're not allowed to enter the nation. The goal here is to put fear into people's hearts, to have a chilling effect on speech, that like the government is unafraid of intimidating you in illegal ways. Okay. The government is now officially willing and able to intimidate you for speech. For your speech. That is a direct violation of the First Amendment.
Now, with all of that said, on the other side, you had officials denying that Hassan was targeted over his beliefs during what they called a routine and lawful inspection, with notably DHS spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin accusing the streamer of, quote, lying for likes, and going on to say, claims that his political beliefs triggered the inspection are baseless. Our CBP officers are following the law, not agendas. And adding, upon entering the country, this individual was referred for further inspection, a routine lawful process that occurs daily and can apply for any traveler. Once his inspection was complete, he was promptly released.
it sounds like she's just making a common business story. I seriously doubt that they tried to look up the individual event that happened, although I guess they could have, but I don't know. I don't know if I would trust anybody in the Trump admin over anything, so.
So then you had Hassan responding to the Trump administration's defense in a statement to NBC saying, what part of a lawful routine inspection requires DHS to question me about my political views, my opinions on Donald Trump, and my stance on Israel and Palestine?
They literally can ask you anything. I've said this a million times, whatever.
Which, you know, were thoughts and questions we've seen echoed by others. I mean, you have people like Alex Peter, for example, known as Lolo, who's an attorney who's popular online, and he wrote, DHS flagging and detaining one of the U.S.'s largest left-wing voices for their political opinions while...
Like, this is how the story can get spread in a very, a malicious way. DHS flagging and detaining one of the U.S.'s largest left-wing voices for their political opinions. That would be really, really, really bad. We have no evidence that happened. That he was flagged for his political opinions? There's zero evidence of this. You can make the assumption if you want, I guess. There's no evidence of that. But
Trump admin suggests
it suggests they might suspend habeas corpus. Okay,
might suspend habeas corpus does not portend well for the future. But then also Hassan's uncle, the co-founder of the Young Turks, where Hassan briefly worked, also chiming in, saying border agents detaining and interrogating Hassan proves two things: they are targeting U.S. citizens as well, and adding
yes. Okay, never mind. Whatever. I don't.
They asked him about his policy positions on Israel and Trump. This is a frontal attack on freedom of speech. This is when you show if you have principles or not. But ultimately, with all this, again, just to reiterate, I don't care if you love or you hate Hassan Piker, especially because it seems like this is not an outlier in a bubble situation. We started seeing claims and stories pop up from people that were from outside the country visiting the U.S., getting detained, questioned, deported. We've talked about a number of those troubling situations, but also like with what happened with Hassan, it happened as we're seeing an increase in reports from people about U.S. citizens being detained at the border and at airports. And we're also seeing it as just socially, we're seeing an escalation with situations popping up like big MAGA Republican accounts calling on Pam Bondi to arrest Aaron Parnas reporting news. There appears to be an escalation happening, and if you don't care about it because there's no like perfect victim for you, there's not gonna be. And unfortunately, as history has shown us time and time again, when this is allowed to happen, uncontested, eventually you and or the people that you love.
I've seen edits of this before where they give Trump a third grader voice.
But what if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? But they're okay. What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. But let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. It came out of Hunter Biden's bedroom. It was disgusting. But what if anything?
Staff refuses to ride with him.
Yeah, because he drives
car.
so erratically.
People, they get lots of things like walking in the
Okay,
truck.
hold on. That's okay. Listen, a lot of people are pussies when it comes to being passengers, all right? We don't do passenger princesses here. You know what? I'm on Fetterman's side now. Never mind. Fuck these people.
Traffic. His wife doesn't talk to him. This is like bigger than sort of the jokey, hey, JBL, do you think this guy should be the president? It's more like, this is a very sad story of somebody who like clearly needs help. And
He should resign.
And should resign. And
He should resign and get help. Hello, everyone. This is
got a
JVL
lot
here
of
with my best
haters
friend,
in the house.
Sarah Longwell, publisher of The Bulwark. Happy Friday, Sarah. We were together mere hours ago on the great Bulwark Live Ask Me Anything show with Timothy, and now here we are again. And I want you to know that I see you wearing your Polo branded shirt with the popped collar.
Okay, so it's funny. Somebody asked me this, and when I was picking out clothes this morning, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go grab one of my polos and show them." Like, and here's the people. What people don't understand is that the fabric of a polo shirt versus other kinds of they are polo shirts because that's like a generic term, but like this is a
Ralph
polo.
Lauren
This is the
polo.
Coca-Cola of polo shirts, and it is the only one. And I got to tell you, man, you know a real lesbian when she irons the collar. 'Cause it is
Wait, is she a lesbian too? They have two. Or no, Kara's not a part of this. The Bulwark, is she? She does her own thing? I don't actually remember.
like stiff as a board. I've never gotten that far, but I do pop the collar on these.
Oh, I love it. So I promised
How do
last
these guys have a monopoly on all the lesbians in media?
night of the show that we would take some more questions, and I have some more questions.
There was a lot of good stuff on the cutting room floor. I was like, I want to talk about these things. 'Cause the questions were good. I just felt like, man, I don't know. I felt like we could have gotten into a lot of fun stuff. So I hope you picked good ones.
Yeah, I mean, I think I picked great ones, honestly. If I had to just tell you about the quality of my question picking. But we're going to start with two things. We're going to start with John Fetterman, who I am writing about for the Triad today.
This lady founded the Bulwark.
There is a New York Times Magazine piece that dropped this morning about him, and it is a tough read.
It is a tough read.
So I would like, since I'm still thinking through my thoughts on this, because I was like a third of the way through writing before we stopped to tape, I'd like to hear what you have to say so that I can then steal it and incorporate it into my newsletter.
Well, here's the main thing, and I guess I want to ask a question back, which is, that's a career-ending profile. I think.
Jesus.
Because the problem isn't just like everything in there, and there's just a lot of hard stuff about his health, his mental health, what he was putting his staff through. You know, and when they quote Tim in the piece from TNL where we talked about this after he'd gone on the show, and Tim was saying, I don't know, guys, like he really can't talk.
Wait, where was this at? John Fetterman profile. Oh, New York Mag. Oof. Oh, no. Do these guys have an AI reader? Wait, this isn't the one that does the God tier profiles. That's the New Yorker, right? Or was it New York Mag? I feel like I've read good profiles in New York Mag as well. Why oof? Oof because I think this is I believe the New York Mag I think is a pretty reputable like outlet. So if they wrote a really damning profile on him, then continue reading. You reach your monthly article limit. Fuck you! You've reached your monthly article limit on incognito? How are you tracking me? What? Start your trial. Okay. $4 for 4 weeks. Yeah, there. Oh my God. Can't you just take my Google Wallet? Okay, I see the archive link, but the audio thing doesn't work there. If I do the... Oh, buy with Google Pay. There it is. Thank you. Ha, this is a business expense. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I'm writing it off, boys. Come at me, IRS. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Got it. Wait, double check. It didn't work. What do you mean it didn't work? Wait, what? Oh, that's not the right. Oh. Yep. Welcome to New York. Cool. No, I don't want to share anything. No, just let me. Thank you. 46 minutes. What? It better.
All by himself.
Is this going to be an AI voice too? It's not even the actual author of the article. He can't even read his own article to us.
John Fetterman insists he is in good health, but staffers past and present say they no longer recognize the man they once knew. Written by Ben Terrace. When John Fetterman was released from Walter Reed Hospital in March 2023, Adam Gentleson, then his chief of staff, was proud of his boss.
Wait, somebody gifted me kick subs? Did I miss it? Thank you, a kick gifted you, Oozer. Thank you. Oozer, I love you. Okay.
For seeking help for what the senator's office and his doctor had said was a case of clinical depression. His 6 weeks of inpatient care had been the latest medical setback for the Pennsylvania Democrat, who had had a stroke mere months before being elected to the U.S. Senate in 2022, nearly derailing his campaign against Republican Mehmet Oz. But a year after his release from the hospital, Fetterman's behavior had so alarmed Gentleson that he resigned his position. In May 2024, he wrote an urgent letter to David Williamson, the medical director of the Traumatic Brain Injury and Neuropsychiatry Unit at Walter Reed, who had overseen Fetterman's care at the hospital.
So many
I think
haters.
John is on a bad trajectory and I'm really worried about him, the email began. If things didn't change, Gentleson continued, he was concerned Fetterman won't be with us for much longer.
Jesus.
His 1,600-word email came with the subject line, concerns, and it contained a list of them, from the seemingly mundane, he eats fast food multiple times a day, to the scary, we do not know if he is taking his meds, and his behavior frequently suggests he is not. We often see the kind of warning signs we discussed, Gentleson wrote, conspiratorial thinking, megalomania. For example, he claims to be the most knowledgeable source on Israel and Gaza around, but his sources are just what he reads in the news.
Wait, hold on. Can I hear him talk about Israel, Palestine? Is he? John Fetterman, Israel, Palestine.
With us today to talk about that and a host of other things is John Fetterman. He is a Democratic senator from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It is true, and I'm going to just say for viewers, the iPad that you see in front of the senator is a transcription of our conversation.
Yes, that's true. I am partially deaf, and this is just captioning. It's no different than if you're watching a show with captioning, or if you use glasses in order to read more effectively. It's just a tool to allow me to fully participate.
This is, and we appreciate your participation. We appreciate
Captioning. Or I am partially deaf.
Oh my God. It's okay. All right. Wait.
I'm going to just say for viewers, the iPad that you see in front of the senator is a transcription of our conversation.
Yes, that's true. I am partially deaf, and this is just captioning.
Okay.
It's no different than if you're watching a show with captioning, or if you use glasses in order to read more effectively. It's just a tool to allow me to fully participate.
This is, and we appreciate your participation. We appreciate you being here. So when President
Wait, real quick. There's no way to get iron ore on this planet besides me, like, actually just manually destroying rocks, right? You can't get it from lava or anything else, right?
Biden was talking about these protests, he did a little both sidesing. He said the anti-Semitism of the protesters is bad, but everybody needs to understand about the humanitarian plight in Gaza too. What tone do you think he should be taking? What's the right answer when talking about these issues?
Well, I'm not going to give the president any advice or anyone, only on fashion. And but I will say this is that it's very clear that there is a very germ of anti-Semitism in all of these protests. And then sometimes it flares up. And again, including one of the leaders in Colombia said some just awful things and talking about they're lucky that I'm not killing Zionists and things like that. And then he defended himself by saying, well, those were taken out of context. And I'm like, well, that's very similar to the way the college presidents, like same kind of language and those kind of monocultures that create situations and that replicates. And now it's not a surprise that when you're kind of seeing this manifest itself in a campus like this. Now, of course, it's a great American value to protest, but I don't believe living in a pup tent for Hamas is really helpful.
You have said that Israel should be allowed to prosecute its own war without conditions from the United States.
I do. I don't know what the turn of words is. That, of course, everyone has the right to defend yourself, a nation, but you also have the right, I believe, to go after and eliminate Hamas, or at least to force them to surrender. And I'm confused why we're not talking about that more. And if you are going to protest, why aren't we protesting? I can't end that war. Joe Biden can't end that war. Netanyahu can't end that war. But Hamas could end it right now immediately. They could release the last hostage and they could surrender. And all of the misery and the death and the destruction ends right there too. So for a true peace, you cannot allow Hamas to function. And they've been very clear. They're proud of what we've done. And we're going to do it again and again. And it's very reasonable to make sure that Hamas needs to be neutralized.
Okay, whether it's the protesters or Israel or other issues, your public image has gone through a pretty dramatic makeover in recent years, or in the past year, let's say. You were once a progressive hero. You were
well. With all due respect, I really haven't changed on that, and I feel like I've been very consistent on those things. And then when I've been saying that for years, like I really don't identify myself as progressive. And I've said this before that it's not that I've changed, but that word has changed as well. And I'm just a Democrat, and I've been very clear and I think consistent. And before the primary, I said, look, I support peace and I support a two-state solution. But if the stuff hits the fan, I'm going to lean in on Israel, and that's exactly what I've done.
So. But surely it would have to, you've been on an extraordinary journey, right? From the mayor of Braddock, Pennsylvania, to a U.S. senator, and along the way, enduring the stroke and a grueling rehabilitation from it. Surely your perspective has changed on some things. That's a lot for any person in a whole lifetime. That's an extraordinary amount in 2 years.
Well, I've got a lot out of that, as strange as it might sound. I thought before the stroke I was an empathetic person, but now after that, it's much more so again. Anyone with a disability or anyone that has struggled with things like depression or even worse, self-harm.
Okay, whatever. We're not going to hear anything. Oh, whatever. I'm just
He declines most briefings and never reads memos.
Space.
High highs and low lows. Long, rambling, repetitive, and self-centered monologues, lying in ways that are painfully, awkwardly obvious to everyone in the room.
You broke XQC. He has been crashing the whole day because of your convo with him. Is that true?
Fetterman was, according to Gentleson, avoiding the regular checkups advised by his doctors. He was preoccupied with the social media platform X, which he'd previously admitted had been a major accelerant of his depression.
Not good.
He drove his car so recklessly, Gentleson said, that staff refused to ride with him. He had also bought a gun. He says he has a biometric safe and takes all the necessary precautions.
Haters.
And living where he does, I understand the desire for personal protection.
Hater alert.
Gentleson wrote, referring to Fetterman's rough and tumble town of Braddock, Pennsylvania. But this is one of the things you said to flag, so I am flagging. Another red flag, Gentleson added, every person who was supposed to help him stay on his recovery plan has been pushed out. Fetterman was isolated, had damaged personal relationships, and was shedding staff. The turmoil in his office continued over the following year. Since winning election in 2022, he has lost his closest advisors, including 3 of his top spokespeople, his legislative director, and Gentleson. His circle of trust has shrunk, and people I spoke with made it clear that they expect more staffers to depart. When Fetterman first caught the attention of the national press, journalists wrote about him like he was a benevolent ogre crossed with a folk hero. More specifically, that's how I wrote about him. This is the tale of Big John Fetterman, the giant who lives in an abandoned car dealership beside a steel mill, my 2018 profile in the Washington Post began. He's 6'8", arms covered in ink, head as bald as a wrecking ball. At the time, Fetterman was mayor of Braddock, which looked a lot like the left-behind corners of the country that had flocked to Donald Trump. He was running for lieutenant governor of the state, and it was easy to see his appeal. He was a bit introverted and curmudgeonly, but funny, smart, and passionate about the fate of communities like Braddock, tattooing the date of each murder that occurred in the town during his tenure on his arm. Endorsed by Bernie Sanders, but also sympathetic to fracking and other positions that cut against the progressive grain, he cruised to victory that year. The stroke in 2022 made it difficult for Fetterman to communicate, which was painfully evident in his one televised debate with Oz. As Republicans piled on with claims that Fetterman was incapable of doing the job, Democrats rallied to his defense and confidently predicted he would still be fit to serve. Now, even
I will say that it's funny that despite the claims that some of these people, and maybe even like this guy literally has a stroke, it is kind of funny that Republicans still lose to them. Like it happened with Biden too. What's going on there?
Though he requires the help of captioning on an iPhone to deal with an auditory processing impediment, he remains a promising politician, at least to casual observers.
Why are we investigating Fetterman right now? Did something happen? Well, this profile just got written about him. Was this yesterday or today? And supposedly it's scathing, I guess. Wait, yesterday or today? I'm so wrong. May 2nd. This is 11 days old? Okay, maybe this is older than that. My bad. But
He still exudes an elusive sense of authenticity, someone who can chop it up with manosphere chieftains like Joe Rogan while maintaining his strong stance on trans rights. A recent poll from Morning Consult found that his overall popularity is on the rise, with 50% of respondents approving of the job he is doing against just 35% who don't. With the Democratic Party out of power and fighting with itself about how to move forward, it would be easy to imagine a Fetterman 2028 machine kicking into gear. Instead, many of his former staffers are hoping it never happens. Part of the tragedy here is that this is a man who
you
could...
have no idea how bad the Dr. Oz campaign was.
Thought I'd do some grocery shopping. I'm at Wegner's, and my wife wants some vegetables for crudité, right? So here's the broccoli. That's $2. Not a ton of broccoli there. There's some asparagus. That's $4. Yep. Carrots. That's $4 more. That's $10 of vegetables there. And then we need some guacamole. That's $4 more. And she loves salsa. Yeah, salsa there. $6. Must be a shortage of salsa. Guys, that's $20 for crudité, and this doesn't include the tequila.
For how much crudité? I don't know what the fuck dish that is. That's like, bro, this is so many vegetables. What the fuck? Are you eating all of this in one meal between the two of you? What the fuck?
I mean, that's outrageous. We got Joe Biden to thank for this.
I bought this whole box of mixed green spinach stuff for like $11 or whatever. This is gonna go in one night. Like, Jesus Christ. Okay. XQC is crashing out about Hassan live on Kick right now. Why? Stop. He's playing Minecraft, bro. He can't be crashing out. Okay, back to this.
be leading Democrats out of the wilderness, Gentleson said. But I also think he's struggling in a way that shouldn't be hidden from the public. Gentleson is a longtime Washington operator. He's worked for a liberal think tank and written a book about the filibuster. He and I first met back when he worked for Harry Reid, then the Democratic leader of the Senate, and later we became friends. Gentleson continues to believe broadly in the Fetterman Project, that Democrats would benefit from punching left more often, and that voters crave a heterodox candidate willing to stick a thumb in the eye of his own party. He says his disagreements with Fetterman are by and large not political, but rather an expression of genuine worry for Fetterman's well-being. He told me he hadn't gone public with his concerns earlier because he had hoped Fetterman could correct course. I believed in John's ability to work through struggles that lots of Americans share, he said. He's not locked into a downward trajectory. He could get back in treatment at any time, and for a long time I held out hope that he would. But it's just been too long now, and things keep getting worse.
Jesus.
He's not the only one who is uneasy. Former and current staffers paint a picture of an erratic senator who has become almost impossible to work for, and whose mental health situation is more serious and complicated than previously reported. No one is saying every controversial position, for example, his respectful relationship with Trump, stems from his mental health, but it's become harder for them to tell which ones do. When I spoke with Fetterman in April and shared those concerns, he denied anything was amiss. He told me that he felt like the best version of himself and later texted that the staff turnover at his office was typical of Washington. Why is this a story? He asked. Many of the staffers I spoke with are angry. They are troubled, and they are sad. These were some of Fetterman's truest believers, and they now question his fitness to be a senator. They worry he may present a risk to the Democratic Party and maybe even to himself. Almost immediately after winning his 2022 race, Fetterman began to fear that everything would unravel. It started, according to two of his former staffers, when Kenneth P. Vogel of the New York Times reached out to Fetterman's team about a donation the campaign had received from a super PAC associated with FTX, the now bankrupt cryptocurrency company started by Sam Bankman-Fried. The Times reported that the PAC had spent $212,000 supporting Fetterman, a sizable amount, but in the context of the most expensive Senate race in the country, which surpassed $300 million in total spending, it was barely a blip. The staff knew it was not great optics to be linked to a crypto scammer, but as far as scandals went, it was pretty minor. Fetterman, however, fretted it would end his career. In long meetings and phone calls, he was unable to shake the idea he might never even get sworn in. Every call would be like an hour with him trying to convince him, to talk him out of some crazy fantasy, a former staffer said. Fetterman denies these claims. Members of his team told me this was an early warning sign that something was off with their boss. In early February 2023, after Fetterman had indeed been sworn in, members of the Senate gathered at the Library of Congress for a caucus retreat. Fetterman, fresh off a hard-fought victory in the cycle's marquee race, should have been riding high. Only he wasn't. A staffer recalled getting a text from a person at the retreat asking if their boss was okay. Fetterman was sitting at a table by himself, slowly sipping a Coke and refusing to talk with anybody.
Okay, listen. I do these things sometimes, okay? I don't have mental disability or anything. Maybe he just wants to be left alone. Damn. Can the guy have some time to himself? The fuck?
Later that day, another staffer heard an alarming report from a journalist. Fetterman had just walked obliviously into the road and was nearly struck by a car.
He was probably having a
aide found
joke.
Fetterman wandering on Capitol Hill a short time later. Worried that he had suffered another stroke, the staffer whisked him to George Washington University Hospital. Doctors there determined there had been no new stroke, and that...
See, look at that. They thought he had a stroke, and they drove him to the hospital. They didn't call an ambulance. All you guys in chat are like, oh, people call ambulance all the time, but you don't need an ambulance. He's fine. They drove him there. He was okay. See? You guys would have thought that everybody would waste money on it. Losers.
That the dizziness and confusion he'd experienced was partly owed to severe dehydration. Fetterman also consulted with a psychiatrist there, and according to someone briefed by doctors, was prescribed medications for depression. Doctors discharged Fetterman.
That's a HIPAA violation. Who said that?
And his team told the press that he had been briefly hospitalized after feeling lightheaded while attending a Democratic retreat. A week later, Democratic Ohio
Retreat? Satan.
Senator Sherrod Brown came to pay Fetterman a visit in his new Capitol Hill office. They seemed destined to get along. Each hailed from purplish-red states and exuded an everyman energy more likely to be found in union halls than in the halls of Congress. But their meeting went awry. Brown tried his best to get a conversation going, but according to two people present, Fetterman was virtually catatonic. He could barely string two sentences together, talking so quietly that everyone in the room had to strain to hear him. Fetterman then stood up and began walking around the office in tight loops, a move the two staffers described as doing figure eights. After Brown left, Fetterman paced from one room inside his office complex to another and back again. At one point, one of his aides said, he walked into the hallway peering over his shoulder as if he were being followed by shadowy figures. The staff got in touch with a Senate physician, and everyone agreed. Fetterman needed to get to...
Maybe they were. Like, yo, do you guys ever... I feel like this is not healthy and should be against the rules. But do you guys ever get the schizo reels where every now and then you're like late at night on Instagram reels, and then this thing will come up with 400,000 or 500,000 likes, and it's just like a schizophrenic person, and you check the comments and they're all like, yes, pulled the schizo reel. And it's like, maybe everybody is stalking you, dude, be careful. Oh my God. Fuck.
Walter Reed. He was admitted on February 15th. Those first days in the hospital were rough. Fetterman was experiencing delusions. He thought that if he took a bed at the hospital, he would be arrested. He told doctors that he believed members of his family were wearing wires to secretly record him.
Were they?
In one chaotic moment, Fetterman grew convinced that a political rally was being held in the hospital's lobby and that he needed to break out of his room to attend. David Williamson, Fetterman's doctor, told me that the main causes of the delusions were the lingering effects of the stroke, dehydration, and depression, and that the original medication for the depression could also have been a factor. According to paperwork from Walter Reed, doctors then stopped all antidepressants and put him on other drugs. Williamson declined to comment on the specifics of the medication plan. The new medication worked, and over the next few weeks, Fetterman's mood steadily improved, according to a public discharge briefing from Williamson. He started sleeping and eating better. He was staying hydrated. He'd come into the hospital burdened by thoughts of self-harm and an indifference about whether he lived or died.
Jeez.
If the doctor said, "Oh, by the way, you have 6 months left," I would have been like, "Okay, whatever," he later told Time magazine. Now, with the new treatment plan, Williamson said Fetterman quickly evidenced better mood, brighter affect, and improved motivation, self-attitude, and engagement with others. He started welcoming visitors. In a photograph from the time released by his office, Fetterman sits in a hospital conference room in front of a treadmill as if to evince an image of health, reviewing documents with Gentleson. Democratic Vermont Senator Peter Welch, one of the few colleagues in Congress invited to visit Fetterman in the hospital, told me that seeing him at Walter Reed was like seeing a friend who was in really rough shape suddenly being his old self.
Aww.
After 6 weeks in the hospital, the doctors determined his mental health issues were in remission. Williamson said he expressed a firm commitment to treatment over the long term. Doctors provided Fetterman with a multifaceted treatment approach. He needed to stay on his medication and to get his blood checked regularly. It was also important that he stay hydrated, so staff made sure his office fridge remained stocked with Gatorade. He needed to eat healthy and get regular exercise. This was both for his mental health and for the underlying heart problems that had led to his stroke. It was also strongly
Damn, wait, how old is he again? $55, okay. I think he looks pretty good for 55. Yeah, I'd say like 40s. Still though, damn, 55, that's pretty early-ish for a stroke, no? What is average age for stroke? The average age, oh, this is AI slop. The average age of stroke is in the 70s. Those strokes are most common among people in their 90s. Jesus.
Suggested that he stay off social media, which exacerbated his mental health challenges. I've never noticed anyone to believe that their mental health has been supported by spending any kind of time on social media, he said in 2023. Fetterman seemed to be a changed man, and he was changing Congress too. The Sergeant-at-Arms installed monitors on Fetterman's Senate floor desk and on the dais to facilitate the audio-to-text transcription he needed to follow proceedings. He wore his hoodie and shorts to work, later saying it was difficult to find any suits that could fit his chopstick legs and accommodate the fact that he had no ass. Fetterman's willingness to be open about his issues seemed to mark a new era in how the public discussed the mental health of politicians. The benighted days of secrets and shaming are gone, Jennifer Sr. wrote in The Atlantic. Fetterman threw himself into the work. He chaired his first subcommittee meeting, which focused on the benefits of food stamps.
Excuse me, actually crashing. What?
Nalgone. the chest. I mean, it's crazy.
Good one, guys.
Nah, I mean, but I was beginning, shit like that would never happen.
Bad timing. He's been crashing out all night. Doubt it.
Nuance is dead.
He flew out to western Pennsylvania to meet with farmers dealing with the toxic effects of a train derailment in nearby East Palestine, Ohio. He co-sponsored a bill to ban stock trading in Congress. And in September, after federal prosecutors accused New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez of taking bribes, Fetterman became the first senator to call for him to resign. A few other Democrats joined the chorus calling for Menendez to step down, but Fetterman was disappointed at how many kept their mouths shut. There was an issue, however, on which Congress moved swiftly and in unison: Fetterman's sartorial choices. The resolution came from Democratic West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin and Utah Republican Mitt Romney. They called it the Show Our Respect to the Senate Act, SHORTS for short. It required male senators to wear a coat, tie, and slacks or other long pants whenever they were on the Senate floor, and it passed by unanimous consent.
Ooh.
Outwardly, Fetterman played it cool, offering as his official statement a photograph of actor Kevin James smiling sheepishly. But behind the scenes, he stewed. He was absolutely irate, said a former staffer. I think it's what soured him on the Democratic caucus.
Oh, no. Wait. Meme? Do you think this is real or staged? What are we thinking? Do you think she's painting this whole thing with that much paint? Is it an appropriate amount of paint, or do you think it's too much? Is it staged? Where are my painters at? No tape or anything? Go talk to X, we need content. I'm always free to talk. You can DM me. I feel bad DMing. I feel like I'm infringing.
Fetterman denies this. It was perhaps a trivial matter for the Senate to spend its time on, but there was hardly a moment to dwell on it. A few weeks later, Hamas staged a large-scale terrorist attack against Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and kidnapping 250 others.
Damn. When did that happen?
In the days after the October 7th attack, Israel declared war and retaliated with brute force, killing Hamas forces as well as thousands of civilians. In the U.S., progressives began calling for a ceasefire to at least pause the carnage. Fetterman felt differently. Now is not the time to talk about a ceasefire, he posted on October 18th. We must support Israel in efforts to eliminate the Hamas terrorists who slaughtered innocent men, women, and children. If his base was surprised by this, perhaps they hadn't been paying enough attention. While Israel had not been a prominent issue in his various campaigns, Fetterman had been talking about his support for the country for years. I'm not really a progressive in that sense, he said while campaigning in 2022. There is no daylight between myself and these kinds of unwavering commitments to Israel's security.
Damn, unwavering.
Still, it wasn't until October 7th that it became clear Fetterman was the most outspoken Israel hawk in his party, offering constant and unconditional support for the military action in Gaza. Early on in the conflict, 16 of his former campaign staffers wrote a letter, anonymously, saying they found his full-throated support for Israel to be a gutting betrayal. Gentleson had taken to defending Fetterman on X from such criticisms, posting, "The thing about being a staffer is that no one elected you to represent them." But it wasn't just staffers who were upset. There was also Fetterman's wife, Giselle, who had become something of a political celebrity in her own right.
Giselle?
She is
Seriously?
a kind-hearted philanthropist, the proprietor of a free store in Braddock that gave away goods and clothing, a formerly undocumented immigrant from Brazil, and a vocal progressive. In early November, just weeks after the attack, Giselle arrived at her husband's Senate office and, according to a staffer present, they got into a heated argument. "They are bombing refugee camps. How can you support this?" the staffer recalled her saying with tears in her eyes. "That's all propaganda," Fetterman replied. Later, a still visibly upset Giselle pulled the staffer aside. She asked him if members of Fetterman's team were pushing him to take these stances.
I'm curious how exact that transcription is of that conversation, because that's not an educated answer. The educated pro-Zionist answer that you're supposed to have, which is actually true to be fair, is when somebody says they're bombing refugee camps, you have to go, you realize every city is a refugee camp, right? Like this, by definition, so that they get UNRWA funding, all the cities are just refugee camps, right? That would be your Zionist shill answer. But
for political reasons, the staffer told her that the opposite was true. Many of them were as upset as she was. "If you're pushing back on this, there's no hope," the staffer recalled her saying. "This is horrible news." A few days later, Giselle texted a different staffer. "I am at breaking point and I can't co-sign this any longer. I'd love some help in language to separate myself from this. Can anyone help me?" Giselle might have disliked what her husband was up to, but his father loved it. Carl Fetterman, an insurance executive, was way more conservative than his son. He used to have a magnet on his refrigerator that warned that his dog bites Democrats, and he watched Fox News constantly. When Fox would air segments about Fetterman's strong stances on Israel or invite him on as a guest, the senator's father would, according to former staff, almost always call to say how proud he was. The war in Gaza was also luring Fetterman back to X. He had handed over his social media passwords to his staff as part of his recovery plan, but when he saw in December that Pennsylvania protesters had stuck "Boycott Israeli Goods" stickers on hummus containers, he approved a post for staff to send. The message adhered to a classic meme format featuring two photos of Drake, one in which the rapper appeared disgusted by text that read, "Protest the rape of Israeli women and girls," and another in which he nodded approvingly to "Protest hummus." The post roiled his staff.
Oh, no.
According to one former aide,
meme.
a group of women who worked in the office argued that the message could be read as hurtful to sexual assault survivors. Members of Fetterman's senior team spent hours urging him to take the post down. The point he was trying to make, that protesters didn't care about the atrocities committed by Hamas, was being lost in the controversy. According to one of them, Fetterman's response was that he didn't want to give in to the woke mob and that anyone upset was welcome to resign.
True.
Eventually, he took it down.
Oh, loser. Never mind.
The endless fights over Israel, which saw Fetterman draw further into himself, coincided with setbacks in his recovery regimen. At that point, Fetterman hadn't gotten his blood drawn for months, despite blood work being a crucial component of the plan. In the final weeks of 2023, a Senate physician called the office, according to a staffer.
By the way, when you were in class and you were like, "God, Shakespeare is fucking so boring," and the teachers were like, well, the reason why it's boring, kids, is because we have to read it, okay? It's a lot different when you actually see it acted out as a play, and you're like, doubt it. This is what they were talking about, okay? When you think there's the most epic and hilarious meme, and then you listen to some guy reading a story, and he's like, and it's a meme of Drake painfully laughing at one thing while looking at disgust. And that's what they mean. See, there it is in real time.
To say that he had seen Fetterman acting bizarrely near the underground trolleys that shuttled people between the Capitol and nearby office buildings. He had witnessed Fetterman, seemingly unaware of his surroundings, walk directly into a group of people, nearly bowling them over.
Yeah, he's a tall guy.
"I just got off with the docs," a staffer wrote to Giselle in a text. "They said they'd call you to debrief." The staffer went on to say that others shared his worries about Fetterman's behavior and that at least 2 top aides were likely to quit soon because of it.
Oh my God.
"I don't want to sound defensive, but I want to be clear that this isn't just me. Everyone here is feeling alarmed." "I don't think for a second that it's you," Giselle responded. Will he find out tonight that they are leaving? My fear is something is off and it won't register. Giselle then texted that she had told her husband that his staff and doctor were worried about him, but that he told her, "That's not true, and I guess I am not talking to you today," before hanging up.
King, my schizoid king. Yes. Yes.
The doctor had also said that he was fighting to get access of the Twitter account. She went on, "Please promise me that he'll never have access."
They're trying to Kanye West my boy. They only do this to the celebrities. They're trying to Kanye West him, okay? They only do this to the ones that are speaking truth to power, all right?
The staffer said that Fetterman was asking for the passwords, but that he would not give them up. "I told him I don't want to talk to him until his blood is tested," Giselle wrote. One former staffer recalled overhearing Giselle on speakerphone that December saying to Fetterman, "Who did I marry? Where?"
Oh, no. Hold on. Is it time to retire? Wait. I try not to talk about politics much here, but I will say it would be really interesting to see which political commentary live streamers would be brave enough to go live, hide chat, open chat GPT, enter this prompt, and answer off the dome with no assistance. Create a quiz on the subject of geopolitics that you think an experienced political commentator should be able to answer. Oh, shit. How do you do this? How do you do chat GPT? The thing is, I have deep knowledge of areas that I've specifically studied, and then there are some things that I just would never be able to fucking answer the question of that everybody else would know. Like, who's the 4th American president? I don't fucking know. Hold on one second. I don't know the 3rd American president. Okay. All I do is copy paste this and okay. So then I just ask the question? James Madison was the 4th? I thought James Madison was an adult cheating website. Got him. Thomas Jefferson was the 3rd. I thought he invented the light bulb. Ask it to search and reason as well. Do I just click search and reason? I have to log in. Oh my God. Hold on. I gotta. You just used the prompt. Okay, wait, hold on. I'm super paranoid. It's just gonna dox me or spit out my credit card. Okay, wait. Let me use the restroom. One sec. I get my pirate software cheating software up too. One sec. Okay, these are going to be multiple choice at least, right? Oh, he didn't even give me a prompt to copy? Okay. Just copy paste the image? Copy the image, paste into ChatGPT. Copy image. Hey, oh my God. Like that? Difficulty advanced? Oh no. Holy shit. Oh wait. It gave me the answers. Oh, it fucked it all up. Okay, can I say, can you remake the quiz? Can you remake a similar quiz, but don't reveal the answers? Question like that? Is that okay? Did that work? All right, here's a revised version. Oh, is it the same questions? I didn't look at the answers, okay. Which nation was the first to formally recognize Kosovo's independence in 2008? Kosovo loves the US, right? But did somebody recognize them later? My guess would be the US. Okay, I'm just gonna write my answers down. Okay. The string of pearl strategy is primarily associated with which country's geopolitical maneuvers? The string of pearls. Russia, Iran, China, and India. I'm going to guess India because I feel like I would know if it was the other three. I don't even know what the fuck that is. I have no clue. What is the primary goal of the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue? The Quad. Promote economic development in Central Asia, ensure maritime security in the Indo-Pacific, counter cyber terrorism globally, and facilitate trade in the African continent. Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. Well, if it's security, the U.S. should be involved, and it's got to be something security related. It wouldn't be economic development, right? So either maritime security in the Indo-Pacific or... So I'm going to guess C. I don't know. Counter... Bro, fuck me. Well, rip our career. The 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, or Karabakh conflict, reignited tension between which two countries? I have no clue. Nagorno-Karabakh? In 2020. What was going on? Not Russia, Georgia. Not Ukraine and Belarus. Not Turkey and Greece. The shit was going on with these two guys, right? Armenia and Azerbaijan? Sure. We'll say B on that one. Okay. Reignited tensions. Could this have been like an airport in... No, the Ukraine war wasn't in full bullshit yet, right? No, okay. Good luck. Okay. In which region is the Horn of Africa? Oh my God, I've heard this said so many times. The Horn of Africa. A critical geopolitical hotspot for maritime trade. Up through the Suez? Why do I feel like I didn't ever read that phrase historically, though, related to the Suez? The Horn of Africa. It's not Southeast Asia. Eastern Africa, Middle East, and Central Africa. No, I would have read about... Somebody would have said Horn of Africa. It's got to be like Eastern or Central, right? I'm the process of elimination, all of that. I don't know the answer to any of these questions. We're going to say B. Eastern Africa? Like near the island and shit? Down there? Or Central Africa? Horn of Africa? Yeah, we'll hit him up with the B there. What doctrine is associated with Russia's assertion of a right to intervene in former Soviet states to protect Russian interest? Eurasian doctrine, Lavrov doctrine, and Brezhnev. Brezhnev sounds like a real thing. No clue. Which of the following countries is not a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SCO? India, Iran, Turkey and Pakistan. Turkey's the furthest away, right? Turkey, maybe? The Abraham Accords on 2028 normalized relations between Israel and which of the following countries? Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, and Oman. Is this multiple choice? It was more than just Saudi Arabia. I don't remember if Qatar was involved. We're going to go. I know Saudi Arabia was in there. Okay. Would they be tricky here? What is the strategic importance of the Malacca Strait? Bro, what connects the Mediterranean and the Red Sea? The primary shipping route for the Arctic? It is a major global oil choke point between the Pacific and Indian Oceans. It is the site of NATO's largest naval base. Hey, fuck it, I have no idea. Please give me a 50%. I just want a 50%. Okay. Now give me the answers. You skipped one. Wait, what did I skip? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Wait, how am I so stupid? What? Oh. What energy project has been a major point of contention between the EU, US, and Russia? Oh, Nord Stream 2 was, right? Not anymore. Not anymore, baby! Okay, B, 2 is C. I put D. The string of pearls. I don't know. What the fuck does that mean? Okay, 3 was B. Okay. The primary goal of the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue ensures maritime security in the Indo-Pacific. I don't even know what countries this involves. 4 was B. Okay, that's good. Armenia and Azerbaijan. 5 was Nord Stream 2. Okay. 6 was B. Eastern Africa. Okay. 7 was B. The Putin Doctrine. I should have just guessed Putin bad. I put A. Not good. 8 is C. Turkey. Hell yeah. 9 is C. The UAE. And 10 is C. It is a major global oil choke point. Okay, wait. Wait. Wait, why the fuck did I think... Wait, am I crazy? I've said this in debates before. Or did Saudi Arabia... Are they like unofficial, like... normalized dudes? Why is nobody correcting me on this? Okay, well... Ask ChatGPT why it was the answer. Israel. Fucking losers. Yeah, I wonder if Saudi Arabia... I don't know if they were close and then October 7th happened and they took their dude back. I don't remember. Who cares? Look what you wrote in your note. Too lazy. Ask Miles. We only talk to Maya when it comes to... Okay, back to this guy. We should do these once per day. We could find stuff to research. Just kidding. Factoid.
Is the man I married. In our conversation, Fetterman downplayed any supposed arguments with Giselle, telling me that she has her own voice, and that he would never try to change her views, even if they differed from his. I think that's very common in political marriage, he said. In a statement, Giselle suggested Gentleson was part of a conspiracy to damage her husband's reputation, saying Gentleson fed her scary, untrue stories about John's health.
Jesus.
She added, I would talk to John's doctors about what Adam was telling me, and they would be confused. Those doctors would tell me that their concerns were not with John, but with Adam. Any alleged concerns heard from me came straight from those lies, not from John's doctors or my own eyes. In response, Gentleson said, I stand by everything I said, and I hope Senator Fetterman gets the help he needs.
Damn.
Fetterman did have his blood drawn in mid-January 2024, but by mid-March, his aides were again worried that he hadn't been getting regular checkups. No one I
What the fuck
spoke
is
to for this
Is everyone in this having a stroke?
article could be sure about whether Fetterman stayed on his medication during this period, but 5 different people said they heard comments from the senator that suggested he was not. Going off meds is a common temptation for people with mental health diagnoses once they start to believe they are well, and it often results in regression. 2 aides told me they frequently heard him talk about how he felt so great that he didn't need medication.
Based.
One person told me Fetterman said he didn't like the way his medication made him feel. Made. Past tense. Fetterman was not acting like himself, though it could be hard to pinpoint exactly what was off. I do feel like, at a certain point, some of the folks in the senior staff just started taking too many liberties around trying to figure out his mental health state, one staffer said. It's like, obviously, I could see him having a bad day and I would try to avoid him myself, but we maybe had no way of knowing, and I want to make sure that it's not just the blanket explanation, because we don't know, right?
Oh, thank God.
There was also the possibility that Fetterman's illness had drawn out or intensified his existing predilections. In some ways...
Is this an AI voice? I don't think it's an AI voice, because it made like a voice when it was speaking for a woman earlier, right? That has to be a human, right?
Fetterman was being the guy voters sent to Congress. He keeps to himself. He cancels fundraising events last minute. He thinks a lot of his colleagues are morons. Make him president already. He was never a particularly easy person to work with. He'd had that reputation throughout his entire political career. So sometimes the staff would debate whether a fundamental change had occurred or they were just imagining things, particularly since there were stretches of time when he was lucid and together. It got hard to know which way was up, Gentleson told me. Was he acting crazy or were we overreacting? I asked myself that a lot. Still, in group texts, including senior staff from March 2024, staffers used terms like manic to describe his behavior. They pointed out that he was canceling medical appointments despite the blood tests being pillars of the recovery plan. I imagine an intervention would backfire, Eric Stern, a Fetterman consultant at the time, texted. But is there any universe in which Giselle could convince him to get his levels checked? I'm honestly just worried for him and don't know who else could get through to him. The way he talked to me today was different, texted Rebecca Katz, Fetterman's longtime consultant and confidant. Meaner. Katz would quit within weeks. One staffer told me there would be entire days when they couldn't let anyone outside the office be around him because he was in some sort of state and might say really fucked up shit to constituents.
And
Sometimes
who doesn't
he would
every
just
now and then?
shut down, according to one former staffer. He was saying unhinged shit, according to one text, and spending more time on social media. Stern wrote to the group that it seemed to him like Fetterman was spiraling and that his constant doom scrolling, I think he's on essentially all day now, would only make things worse. It's self-sabotage, Katz texted. Him against the world is his comfortable place. Another staffer chimed in to say the boss had picked a fight in the Senate cloakroom when an attendant wouldn't let him bring a friend in. He said something to the effect of, "You let all these imbeciles in here, but you won't let me bring in my friend?" Bobby Maggio, a longtime aide who often defended his boss, thought that people might be overreacting to the cloakroom incident. He replied that this could just be an example of Fetterman being gruff and frustrated by a stupid rule. In February 2024, Gentleson announced he was stepping down as chief of staff while remaining on the payroll as an advisor. For months afterward, he debated whether to contact Fetterman's doctor. When he was still working for Fetterman, he had been explicitly told not to, and when he did so anyway, there were massive fights. According to Fetterman, in December 2023, Adam Gentleson took action that jeopardized the privacy, sanctity of my confidential medical records. I subsequently directed my doctors to sever any access Adam could have to my medical information. In May 2024, Gentleson decided it would be best to lay everything out there. I wanted to do what I could think of to try and get him help, he said. That's why I sent the letter. He also said he worried that Fetterman could end up inadvertently hurting someone else. He engages in risky behavior, he wrote in the letter. He drives recklessly.
Oh my
he
God.
FaceTimes, texts, and reads entire news articles while driving.
Cringe.
And I don't mean while stopped at a light or something. He reads and FaceTimes while driving at high speeds.
He's being efficient with his time.
Less than a month later, Fetterman caught a red-eye flight back from Los Angeles after taping an episode of Bill Maher's show. His staff urged him to have someone pick him up from the airport and drive him home, but he refused. Just before 8 a.m., according to a police report, Fetterman was traveling at well over the 70-mile-per-hour speed limit on I-70 when he smashed his Chevy Traverse into the back of a 62-year-old woman's Impala, totaling both cars. Giselle, who had been in the back seat, suffered a pulmonary contusion and spinal fractures. Fetterman, calling from the side of the road, told a staffer he had fallen asleep at the wheel and handed the phone to a police officer.
Driving is so easy and trivial for him. He can't even stay awake while doing it. Okay. Based. Fuck, I just went back. On accident. Wait.
To protest hummus down. Her, that's not true, and I guess I am not talking to you today that a lot. Still, in group time on social media, Impala totaling both cars. Giselle, who had been in the back seat, suffered a pulmonary contusion and spinal fractures. Fetterman, calling from the side of the road, told a staffer he had fallen asleep at the wheel and handed the phone to a police officer. It's a miracle no one died, the officer said.
Oh my, dramatic.
After Donald Trump won the election, Fetterman did something no other Democratic senator dared to do.
Had a meeting with
He
him.
went to Mar-a-Lago.
Wow.
I didn't bend any knee. They reached out and invited me, Fetterman told me. And if you're a senator from a critical state and the president would like to have a conversation, that's part of our responsibility.
True.
Giselle, however, wasn't so keen on traveling with him. It was a whole saga, said a former staffer. She wasn't going to go, and they had fights about it. To convince her, Fetterman told her to think of this as an opportunity to showcase what a model dreamer looked like in an effort to get the president-elect to soften his views on illegal immigration. If she didn't go, Fetterman said, she'd lose the right to complain about whatever he did as president. He said in a small group with senior staff, I told her to put up or shut up, the staffer recalled. If she doesn't go, I don't want to.
Does that seem to support Fetterman? I don't know. I know he's me right now, but is he supportive of him? I was kind of like on the fence, but I don't know. I feel like I've heard him simp too much for the other side lately. I feel like he lost his way on that centrist grift, but I don't know. I don't have strong feelings about him. I just like lean a little bit against him.
I hear about it. Fetterman described the interaction slightly differently. It's not so much convincing her, he told me. It's the upside. Ultimately, Giselle did go, and by all accounts, the meeting went smoothly. According to Fetterman, the conversation lasted about 75 minutes, and the president was charming, fully engaged, and different from the persona you may see on television.
Ooh.
His faculties haven't slipped at all, Fetterman told me. It's not that I admire it, I acknowledge it. And if you don't, you do it at your own peril politically. While many Democrats were shell-shocked by Trump's victory, Fetterman seemed unfazed. He understood the Trump phenomenon better than most of his party, and having won a state that went for Trump in 2024, shared more voters with him too. And so it made sense, in his mind, that he could find ways to work with the incoming president. The Mar-a-Lago pilgrimage was a start, but Fetterman went further. He was the only Democrat to vote for Trump's pick for Attorney General, Pam Bondi.
Yikes.
He posed for a thumbs-up photo with Elise Stefanik, then the nominee for U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. And he came close to supporting Pete Hegseth, the nominee for Secretary of Defense, who had been dogged by reports of excessive drinking, financial mismanagement, and sexual misconduct. We are going to have massive issues internally when he votes for Hegseth, a staffer texted in mid-January. Fetterman had been the only Democrat to meet with Hegseth late last year as the former Fox News host made the rounds on Capitol Hill trying to earn Senate support for his confirmation. Fetterman had left his meeting with Hegseth unimpressed, according to former staff, but as the decision neared, it seemed like he might actually vote for him. It would be a bad look, he told staff, if all the Democrats turned their backs on the person who would be leading the armed forces. It would make them appear weak and partisan. Fetterman became so torn by the decision that on the day of a procedural vote that would move Hegseth's nomination closer to completion, he floated the idea of not voting at all. "What if I left?" he asked his staff. Instead of voting, he said, maybe he should just sneak out of Washington and hole up at his parents' place in York, Pennsylvania. "I felt like I was looking at a 6'8", 8-year-old, the staffer said. The back and forth led to what one person in his office at the time called a full-blown meltdown. According to a contemporaneous text message from this staffer sent to a colleague, Fetterman had become so distraught about the Hegseth vote, as well as chatter in the media that he might switch parties and become a Republican, that he spent part of the day locked in his office fighting with Giselle and crying while FaceTiming with staff.
Aww.
He says that they are trying to cancel him again, but we don't know who they are, a staffer said in a text. Fetterman ultimately voted against Hegseth's nomination. In a statement, Fetterman said, "My no vote on Pete Hegseth speaks for itself. The rest is pure conjecture." Fetterman's struggles seemed to be occurring in a vacuum of his own making. He was friends with Welch of Vermont and Republican Senator Katie Britt of Alabama. The three of them dined on occasion and swapped stories about their families. But beyond that, he was isolated. He deleted himself from the Democratic caucus group chat. He rarely, if ever, attended hearings.
Bro left the GC.
During the first quarter of this year, he missed more votes than any other senator. In my conversations with various Democratic Senate staffers, the view of Fetterman essentially boiled down to, he can be difficult to work with, but we're lucky to have him in the Senate. In recent months, Senators Patty Murray of Washington and Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire had what staff referred to as verbal altercations with Fetterman. But like former Senator Joe Manchin, Fetterman provides a mostly reliable vote from an unreliable state. He has what baseball statisticians might refer to as a high WAR, wins above replacement. One of the biggest challenges we have is to get trust from working-class Americans, Welch said, and I think John has a unique ability and sensibility to connect and be trusted. Welch said he thinks Fetterman is doing well emotionally and appears to be quite engaged with the job. When asked if she had observed Fetterman struggling, Britt told me, not at all.
Base.
Still, some of Fetterman's behavior was leaking out into public. Last year, the Sunrise Movement posted a video of Fetterman mocking and filming one of his constituents, a climate activist who was calmly trying to ask him about his stance on pipelines. Earlier this year, a passenger on a flight to Pittsburgh filmed a video of Fetterman getting into an argument with the pilot about wearing his seatbelt in a way that was visible to the crew.
Wait, what? Seatbelt incident.
Is your seatbelt on?
Yes, it is.
Okay, it needs to be visible for the crew at all times. That's not on. That's not an us thing. That's a federal regulation. So it's okay. It's okay.
I put my seatbelt on and I haven't said anything.
Okay, it's okay, but it just has to be visible to the crew at all times. It's a federal regulation, so if your seatbelt's on, it just has to be visible. And right now, it's not visible. We have an extender if you'd like that. It'll make it bigger so it can go outside of your sweatshirt. Would that work?
No.
Sir, if you want to go to Pittsburgh, it's simple. You have to follow our instructions or you're going to ask to get off the airport. We're not asking much. Let it happen. Like, all that needs, we need to be able to see your seatbelt at all times.
I've been flying for 30 years and I've never experienced this. I'm not sure what's happening.
Okay, well, it's a federal regulation, so if I don't make you do it, then I get in trouble. And I don't want to get in trouble because I like my job. So I'll ask.
trying to take down my boy with hit pieces, okay?
If you want to go to Pittsburgh, it's simple, the pilot explains. You're going to have to follow our instructions or be asked to get off the airplane. Moments like these were becoming increasingly difficult for staff to explain. And behind the scenes, things were worse. In March, Fetterman suddenly took an early morning trip to Hartford, Connecticut without telling his team why, leaving them at a loss for what to tell Giselle when she demanded to know why he was missing one of their kids' birthdays. Fetterman objected to this characterization, saying to me, "I took a weekend trip in March to visit the gravesite of my friend from grad school who died in 1993, a trip my staff and family knew about." When he was in Washington, there were entire days in which his schedule was cleared because he seemed like he was in no mood to be around others. And when he did have meetings, they sometimes went south. In early February, Fetterman met with Jeremy Ben-Ami, the leader of the progressive Jewish organization J Street. Over the course of Israel's campaign against Gaza, J Street has walked a difficult line, calling itself pro-peace and pro-Israel, a Zionist institution that isn't afraid to take shots at Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The organization lives in a gray area, but during the meeting, it became clear that Fetterman saw things in black and white. "You can't reform a carton of sour milk," Fetterman told Ben-Ami, according to notes from the meeting referring to the Palestinians. Fetterman said he did not believe in a two-state solution and claimed he had never met an Arab person who would condemn Hamas. Correction, the notes from the meeting stated. Only a single Arab he has met with that staff was present for wouldn't outright condemn Hamas. Fetterman went on to make statements that shocked people. In opposing a ceasefire, he said, "Let's get back to killing." A person who heard the conversation told me, "He said, kill them all."
Jesus.
In a statement, Fetterman denied the account.
He said, kill them all.
Commanded you to kill your own father and stand by while thousands of men,
Literally Jamie Lannister.
children burned alive, but you have done it.
Okay, that was way cringier than I thought. I don't know what that fucking remix was, but okay.
Adding, any reference to killing was solely about Hamas, and I do support the destruction of that organization down to its last member. When I met with Fetterman in mid-April, it was the first time I had interviewed him since we drove around western Pennsylvania in 2018. The lobby of his Capitol Hill office contains a wall covered by red posters commemorating the Israelis who have been held hostage by Hamas since the October 7th attack, the word kidnapped appearing atop each one. In his personal office, Fetterman sat with his legs spread wide in a leather chair. He wore his customary Carhartt hoodie but no shoes, occasionally scratching at his feet through his socks. He looked a bit like a 90s sitcom husband lounging comfortably in his man cave.
Okay.
Fetterman's staff, past and present, had cautioned me that there are good days and bad days. I was told this was a good day.
Okay.
Years after the stroke, Fetterman continues to struggle with auditory processing. To chat with me, he had put an iPhone on the table that transcribed my questions to him in real time. Sometimes Fetterman wouldn't finish reading a question before answering, and other times his sentences could come out a bit garbled. After a podcast taping earlier this year with The Bulwark, the interviewer Tim Miller came away feeling like Fetterman might not be all there. "He's struggling," Miller said in a separate podcast taping.
Hater.
"He's like really struggling. And I just think coming off of the Biden thing, we should not be hiding the ball on this sort of stuff." But in my conversation with Fetterman, I didn't find any indication that the stroke had left him cognitively impaired. Our interview lasted just over an hour, during the first half of which he seemed excited to discuss just about anything I threw at him. He had problems with the way Democrats had estranged themselves from the public, he said, but still had no intention of leaving the party to become a Republican or even an independent.
Oh, see, look at that.
Same chance I'm going to end up with a beautiful head of hair. We talked about family, about the toll a life in the public eye can put on them. "It's shitty," he said, about Giselle's hatred for politics. It's only intensified, and about how near-death experiences can bring loved ones together. I'll never miss an opportunity to have dinner with him and talk to him now, Fetterman said about his father, who had suffered a heart attack that nearly killed him. As for Fetterman's own health, he said it was better than ever. A day earlier, he had published an op-ed in the New York Times about his experience with the anti-obesity medication Mounjaro, which he said helped save his life.
Damn.
And it wasn't just his physical health. For someone that suffered from depression, to me, it's just bright, he said. It feels crisp and not on anything. I just feel like my best version. Feels crisp and not on anything. This seemed as good an opening as any to ask him the hard questions about his mental health. It's been 2 years since Walter Reed, I began. I know mental health is a lifetime struggle.
Can Dems have top-down messaging when there's always a coalition that will feel left out? Dems have so many different groups to message to. Republicans mainly have angry white people, so it's easier top-down. Don't make that mistake. Republicans are growing their coalition, at least, well, Trump is. I don't know if Republicans in general will. We can have top-down messaging, okay?
I wouldn't even describe it as a lifelong one, he said, cutting me off. He explained that before his stroke, he wasn't joy, joy, joy all the time, but that the actual mental health break only happened after everything kind of collided at the same time. Do you ever worry about slipping? I asked. No, 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 he said. It's freeing, and really appreciate things that I would never have been able to do if I never recovered from that stroke. I've talked to a number of former staffers of yours who say they are worried about you, I said, who say that they are worried that you are not on your recovery plan, that you might not be taking your meds, that they've heard you make comments about how you didn't need them anymore, or that you didn't like the way they made you feel. Do you care to comment on that?
Nope. Say no.
I won't, he
Hell
said,
yeah.
his eyes casting between his feet and the 2 press staffers sitting at a back table. He said that no one in his staff would know about his personal health situation,
King.
and that anyone who told me otherwise was simply misinformed. There's not really anything to respond when that's just not accurate, he said. What they say, I pressed on, is that they've witnessed ups and downs that could be associated with kind of a relapse. And they also worry that the medication that you're on is not just for depression, but more serious drugs that if you're not on them would be a problem. Is there truth to that? I don't have any comment on that, he said. I'm going to go off record. Go off record. Go off record. I cannot report what Fetterman said over the course of the next 4 minutes, but I can say that after he was done talking,
I left with a black eye. Just kidding.
I found myself in the hallway outside his office making awkward small talk with one of his press aides. 5 minutes later, the door opened and I was ushered back in. The office felt different now, quiet and tense. Fetterman was still in the same chair, but slumped into himself like a deflated parade float. His shoes were now on, and he avoided looking at me. Finally, I broke the silence. Anything to say about that? I asked, hoping to pick up our conversation where we had left off. There's not anyone that you're referencing who would be privy to my medical history, he said. Do you care to comment whether they are right or wrong? I asked.
Nope.
I'm just going to say that it's disgruntled employees saying things that are either untrue or... So that's kind of the business that we are in, he said. I asked him why these staffers might be disgruntled. For whatever reason, he said. There's a lot of people who just hide behind unnamed sources in articles.
Ooh.
I tried to move the conversation to Trump's tariffs and other issues before leaving, but it was plainly clear that his mind was elsewhere. His voice was low. He barely bothered to look up. His sentences were clipped. I feel like there's been kind of a tone shift here, I said, trying to catch his eye. Can you tell me what you're feeling? What you're thinking?
Bro, you off-record raped him.
For the first
what the
time
fuck?
since I had returned to his office, he looked right at me. No, everything's great, he said deadpan. Everything's great. I don't know what you're referencing.
Damn. Okay, I just want to hear that before their commentary. Jesus.